Welcome to the Good Ned podcast, Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, about 6 or 7 months ago, my mom said, "Hey, have you ever heard of NDEs?" And I'm like, "What's that?" She goes, "Near-death experiences." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of those." And she goes, "You really need to check them out." And so at work, I'm able to listen to a lot of content, and I started listening to 3 to 5 NDEs a day.
Oh, wow.
And I came across yours just a few weeks ago, and I was mind blown. And I was like, this one aligns with how I feel. And I had to reach out.
Good.
And I just really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Could you start out just, we'll get right to it. Could you just describe your NDE, your early life, and everything that unfolded after that?
sure. Yeah, I'll just get right into it. So I was born in North Carolina, 1975, and when I was two, my parents moved to Virginia, and we lived in, just a house, suburbia. I had a brother, still have a brother, and we used to, run around the neighborhood, play with other friends back before everybody had game systems and phones, and there was stuff on TV. Like we would just run around all the time. And so one day. I was in a neighbor's backyard with a good friend of mine and some other kids in the neighborhood, my brother, and we were just playing. I don't know what we were doing exactly, but something happened to me. I couldn't breathe. No matter what I did, I couldn't get a breath of air. I couldn't take a breath, and I knew this was getting serious. It just kept going on and on. So I decided I should go home and try to get some help from my parents. So I started walking home and I only got maybe 20 feet away from my friends, and this breathing problem, it triggered something for me. It triggered a release of my consciousness, my soul, whatever the core being, whatever it is I really am. Like that left my body. And I watched as my body fell to the ground. I like was an external viewer and I saw it fall to the ground. And I was just kind of floating there. And a couple things were readily very obvious. The first was that it felt different. It was like very comfortable to leave my body. Honestly, it was kind of pleasant, and like I felt different. I was still me, but I was like I was more aware, more intelligent. It was a little bit like waking up from a dream, but this life was the dream, and I was waking up to a higher reality. And I looked back at my friends, and they didn't notice anything had happened to me, and what had seemed super important before now it seemed so trivial. And a couple things happened very quickly. One is my entire life like flashed before me in extreme detail, like everything I'd ever done. It replayed in extreme detail, and I re-experienced all my thoughts and my feelings and what happened. But the twist of it was I could literally feel how I had impacted other people. And for me as a kid, it was primarily my parents. Like I really felt how like they felt about me, how what I had done impacted them. And as a kid, the main thing for my father, the main thing that stood out was his frustration, his anger with changing diapers, and like I could feel that, but it was also self-evident, and I guess it was my own judgment that I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just a little kid. That's just what little kids do. I hadn't deliberately caused him this frustration, but I could still feel, the frustrations that he had. And then my mother, what really stood out with her was the love. She had, she was a good mother. She loved me, and that really stood out. Like it was important. It had a significance to it that is, it's hard to translate, but it was obvious that it was important that she loved me. And then I noticed a light in the distance, like I guess it was like a pinpoint of light, looked kind of like a star, but I knew it wasn't a star. I knew it was important, but I didn't understand why. I didn't know why I felt drawn to it, or there was just a significance to it that I knew, but I didn't understand it, and I didn't continue to focus on that. So I was just floating there, like around near my body in my neighbor's backyard. And I started to have questions. And as I would have questions, it's like the answers would come to me in perfect clarity, like it just a perfect explanation of whatever question I would have. And the first question I had was, what am I? It's like it was obvious I wasn't this body. I was something different. I was just fundamentally different from this body. And I said, well, what am I? And I was able to like look at myself and see myself in that state, and I was just this round orb of consciousness. As a kid, it reminded me of an egg or maybe a bubble, just a round ball. And there was some internal to it that I couldn't explain. I didn't understand, but there was a faint light coming from inside, and that's just how I existed. That's what I looked like. And then I had more questions. It's like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, where did I come from, and why am I here? Like on this planet? Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? And so something I had previously been through is like this experience replayed for me, and I re-experienced something that I'd been through before. And so it started out as I had been an orb-shaped consciousness or soul with hundreds or thousands of other orb-shaped consciousness. We all kind of looked the same. And we existed in a very bright, what I would call a sea of light. There was a whole bunch of us, and it was very, very bright. And we were all happy and content, and there was no problems. We just kind of existed like that. But we were ignorant. We had never done anything. We didn't have any experience. We didn't have any wisdom. We just existed in happiness, and we were ignorant and simple. And periodically, some sort of gift or treat would come down from above, and we would each get one, and it made us a little bit happier. It kind of reminded me, as a kid, it reminded me of getting a cookie. It's something. It wasn't something you eat because we didn't exist like that in that form, but it was something you get that makes you a little bit happy, but it's not a big deal. Anyway, one time these treats came down, and there was one fewer treat or gift than there were souls in the group. And so I made the conscious decision, okay, I'm just going to pass up these treats because I know all these other souls around me that they're just like me and they want one. So I'm just going to let them have it, and I'll go without. And when the last treat came down to the last soul, I was very gently lifted up out of this group. And the care with which I was lifted was really noticeable, like very gently lifted and removed. And simultaneously, there was like a higher level mind-to-mind communication that contacted me and said, basically that I was loved, and this was my creator who was talking to me and or communicating with me. It wasn't like verbal talking. And what I had done was very important. Giving up what I wanted for those around me was very important, and it indicated that I was ready for something. And basically, he went on to say, and I'll just call him God for simplicity. My creator, God, said that there was a wonderful existence in store for me, that I was loved and cared for, and there was created, and it was just going to be a wonderful experience, and it was going to be absolutely fantastic. But I wasn't ready for all that fantastic stuff yet. I needed to learn and get an education first, so that I could really enjoy my existence. Like
Huh.
this happiness that I had in this group was nothing compared to what was possible. But
Huh.
in order for me to enjoy that, I needed to go through an experience that was going to be very, very brief, and it was going to be difficult. And I basically said, well, can't you just change me and make me how I need to be? Like why do I need to go through something hard?
Yeah.
And the answer was uh, essentially that yes, absolutely, God was capable of changing me and making me any way that He might want. He was fully capable of doing that. But I and all these other souls, we were created with free will, and free will was a fundamental part of our creation. It was like a core tenet of why we were ever created in the first place. And it was like God didn't want mindless slaves. He wanted us to be free to make our own choices. Like that was like part of love. Part of loving someone is letting them make their own choices. And he further went on to basically explain that he's loving, kind, compassionate, honest, has integrity, is generous, giving, loving, all these positive traits. Like that's what God is. And for us to really enjoy our existence, we need to freely choose those same kind of traits for ourselves. And we need to recognize that, there's some traits we need to not uh, embody, and some traits that we need to embrace. And that this education that was in store for us, it was going to teach us these lessons. We were going to learn for ourselves these good traits bring happy returns, and traits that are counter to those, they bring negative returns. And God was absolutely confident of this plan. His confidence was complete. Um, and he exuded confidence about this plan. Like I can't really stress that enough, like how confident he was that this is a good plan. And he also stressed that this is extremely brief. From a spiritual perspective, this education we're getting is very, very fast, very quick. And the benefit we get is so significant that it all makes it worthwhile.
Hmm.
So anyway, I said, oh, okay. I mean, the explanation was great and I agreed with it and I had no reason not to. Um, and he further went on to say, would you like to see my face? And I said, okay, sure. I had been looking at all these souls I was with. And when I agreed, my attention was shifted or turned, and I was looking at a giant sun-like entity, just absolutely humongous and extremely bright. Frankly, it looked like a sun. But the difference is like inside the sun were like millions and millions and millions of these orb-shaped consciousnesses all together. And like each one of them contributed to the makeup of this entire sun. Um, and some of them saw me and like they kind of like came to the surface and I could see them clearly. I could see their face. And they basically welcomed me into existence. And they were very happy I was there. They they basically said that uh, they understood I was going to go through a difficult experience, but they explained that each soul is irreplaceable and unique, and that when I joined them, I would contribute something that no other soul could match. No one else could do what I could do. Like no one was just like me. I was unique and irreplaceable, and so I would add something to their happiness when I joined them. And so they were really happy about that. They were excited. But they understood that I first needed to go through something before I could join them and join in their happiness. So with that, God kind of said, "Okay, are you ready? Are you sure you're willing to go through with this?" And I said, "Yes, I'm willing to go through with this." And it's like, bam! I was very quickly moving away from that scene, going somewhere else, moving to a different realm or moving far away. I don't exactly know, but we started looking at places I could go. These were like a whole bunch of different planets that I might go to, and it was up to me to choose where I wanted to go. And
Oh,
we looked
wow.
at, I guess, thousands and thousands of different planets. Like in that state, for some reason, God allowed, like I had a very high intellect, or, I don't exactly understand, but I could process information very quickly. And we looked at lots and lots of planets. Okay. I don't even know how many, but it was a lot. And then we got to Earth, and there was something about this planet or being human or something about it that really appealed to me. This is like, okay, this is perfect. This is where I want to go. This is the kind of experience I want. And God said, okay, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm sure. And with that, the decision was finalized. And it's like, okay, this is where I was going to go. And with that, my initial question had been answered. And it's like, okay, well, I was back to floating around my yard. Like I re-experienced that whole process. And then I was back to floating around my yard. And, it takes me a long time to explain all this, but it all happened very quickly during the experience. So I was floating around my backyard and I had more questions. I wanted to know, okay, I understand, where I came from and how I got here, but why am I Aaron? Like, why am I this person? How did that happen? And so again, the experience of becoming Aaron was shown to me. It started out, I had been a soul in some kind of midway realm is what I would call it. Um, and I was kind of like confused or irritated or unhappy. I was frustrated with myself was the main thing I would say. It was like I had screwed up big time and I felt bad about screwing up. That's pretty much how it felt. As I understand it, I had lived a previous life where I had hurt people or done something wrong, something I regretted deeply, and it was a problem for me. The whole thing screwed with my mind. I didn't have a good mindset. I was just kind of a mental mess. And there was guides that were trying to help me. They wanted me to come back to Earth and get myself straightened out was the gist of it. And I basically told them, I'm not going back to Earth and you can't make me. And my guides agreed. They said, you're right. We can't make you go back to Earth. But if you go back to Earth, can we show you some souls that you would help? And I said, well, okay, I guess so. And it kind of like triggered something deeper for me. Like I like the idea of helping these other souls. And so they showed me some other souls. And they said, essentially, if you go back to Earth, you'll be able to help them. And so I said, okay, well, I kind of like that idea. It kind of got me past my own problems or frustrations. And so I agreed. I said, okay, well, we can look at the possibilities. We can take a look. And so we transitioned to kind of like a different realm or something. And they showed me a person I could become. And this was like a really angry person, and their whole life would be dominated by anger. I think the situation was they had a very difficult childhood that they would be very angry about. And essentially by working against that anger, an angry person and the soul is working against that angry person, all those physical characteristics that cause the anger, the soul is constantly working against that. And so that would help me to become more peaceful, essentially. That's kind of how it worked. And but I completely rejected that life. I was like, no, I'm not living that life. No. And my guides respected that. They said, okay, well, let's look at some other possibilities. And so it became clear that I had been to Earth many times before. This wasn't my first time to Earth, and I had contributed to society in the past. I had raised children. I had helped society progress throughout time,
Mm.
and so that gave me a lot more options. That gave me the freedom to make a lot of choices that a newer soul might not necessarily have.
Huh.
And so I was able to, pick some parents that I thought were, pretty nice people, like they would be good parents. And we started looking at the options available to these parents, and we looked at the parents themselves, and like I was able to see all kinds of details about them. There was no what their religious views were, where they were in their spiritual journey, like how advanced they were. Like I saw all of that. I saw what kind of relationship I would have with my brother. All this kind of stuff was information that I had, and it all seemed okay to me. And so we started looking at, okay, well, what kind of kid could they have? Like, what kind of body could I have if I choose these parents? And it quickly became obvious that they had the genes available to have a redheaded child. And I really like that. Somehow that really appealed to me. I really like the idea of having red hair because it's kind of rare. That rarity really, I really liked it. And I wanted to be a girl because I was really concerned about hurting other people. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to hurt anybody else in life. That was very important to me, and I felt like being a girl would make me less likely to hurt others.
Mm.
So we looked at, what would it be like if I became a redheaded girl? And basically all the options available to these parents for that. It didn't really work with me. It was like I would have been socially awkward. I would have been had trouble like dating or getting married. It just wouldn't work. I wouldn't be able to find a significant other to live my life with. And you know, I like the red hair, but there was too many downsides of that choice for me. So we started looking at, okay, what about boys? And the choices for a redheaded boy didn't work at all. But it became obvious that a brown-haired boy, like there was tons and tons of options available. I could basically fine-tune this body however I wanted because there were so many options available with all the genes that these parents had. So we started looking at it, and I thought, okay, well, I want to be like the best looking guy on the planet, really good looking. And
Oh yeah, who doesn't want that,
those genes were available
right?
to these parents. Yeah, who doesn't want that? And my guides were like, well, yeah, okay, you can choose that if you want, but here's the downsides. Here's the problems with choosing that. And they showed me I would be arrogant, I would be too promiscuous. I didn't have the kind of self-control necessary to make that work. Women would treat you differently, and you're not going to be able to resist certain temptations.
Mhm.
And so maybe it's not a good choice to you because there's spiritual downsides to this. And those spiritual downsides were very obvious to me at that time in that setting. And so we backed the attractiveness down, okay, to a little bit attractive, but nothing extraordinary. I know at 50, anyone watching this is like, well, that guy's not attractive at all. But as a younger man, I was a little bit attractive, okay. Um, Time gets us all.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway, I,
I
I
know.
I started looking at intelligence. Um, I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet, just absolutely brilliant, like
Mhm.
Einstein or Aristotle or one of these kind of guys. And my guide said, the those genes are available to these parents, but there's a downside. If you're the smartest guy on the planet, you're going to be arrogant. You're going to look down on other people. You're going to have trouble making friends. It's going to cause problems for you. And there's a spiritual like counterpart to that, to being like that, that's not good. And so it quickly became obvious, okay, that's not a good choice for me. So again, we backed just like with the looks, we backed the intelligence down to intelligent, smart, but not a super genius, nothing like that. And then we looked at everything about the body, eye color, height, everything down to the most intimate detail and how all this stuff would affect my life. We looked at it and I was able to pick, what I wanted and the guides would make, if there was a problem, they would point it out. And then when we got the body pick, my guide said, okay, here's an issue that you hadn't thought about. All these genes that you've picked, this body that you've picked, um, you would have really, really bad acne as a teenager. It wasn't something I picked, but it was like an unintended side effect of all the choices that I've made. And you would have really bad acne as a teenager. And so we took a close look at that, what that would be like. And essentially, it was like 2 years, something like that, where I had really bad acne, like the worst acne in the entire school kind of thing. And it was obvious that that was going to be difficult and that was going to be a hard experience to go through. But I also knew, and my guides kind of helped explain this, that this will help you on your mission. This will help you to be less surface driven. It'll actually help you with your spiritual growth going through this. Even though it's a difficult experience, it's going to help you spiritually. And to me, 2 years of this frustration, it's hard to explain how tiny that looked from the spiritual perspective. 2 years of being frustrated about being covered in pimples. It seemed like almost trivial how small 2 years is in a spiritual perspective. Um,
Hmm.
but mainly because it would actually help me, I agreed to it instead of changing the body around. I agreed, okay, I'll just go through this. It's okay. And so then my guide started, they had some plans for me. They showed me basically things I had done in past lives, and they showed me how, okay, something I'd done in the past life was now going to be integrated into this upcoming life. It was like I had written a check in the past life and now I had to cash it, or I'm an engineer, so the way I like to think of it is it's like an unbalanced equation. One side of the equation was in a past life, now we got to balance out the equation in this upcoming life. And if you don't cash that check or balance that equation, it causes it's like spiritual baggage that kind of like holds you down, prevents you from moving to higher and higher levels. And there's like an education to it, like receiving what you've previously given out. It's there's no better education than that. And they showed me a number of different things I'd done. What the most clear one that stands out is I had been in a fight in the past life, and this is a fight I easily could have avoided. Basically, I beat up a smaller guy, and there was no good reason for it. I beat him up, I humiliated him. And I watched this scene with my guys. They showed me, and we watched it, and it was obvious that I was in the wrong. Like I had no business beating up this guy. And now, essentially, they had arranged that I was going to receive a similar kind of treatment in this life. I was going to have my nose broken as a teenager, getting a small fight and have my nose broken. That was what was going to happen. But I needed to agree to it. Like I don't mean I had to agree to it, but in order for this to happen, my approval was required.
Huh.
And so I could have rejected it, but I knew that it was going to help me spiritually. I knew it was something I needed to go through to move upward spiritually, and so I agreed to it. And they showed me other things I had done in the past. Some of it is too bad to even get into things I had done in the past life, but it was going to be integrated into this upcoming life. And in order for that to happen, they needed my approval. It was my I had the final say on whether or not this would happen. But for the most part, I agreed with what they suggested, and these things would happen to me in life. Uh, and when we looked at all these past life details, and I agreed to a whole bunch of stuff. After we were done with that, we started looking. I didn't have to agree to it, but they asked me to. Relationships with coworkers, friends I would have in life. There was all kinds of little things here and there that were planned. I would help other people at times, and at times other people would help me. It would work both ways. Like all these different lives were planned together so that we helped each other. But my agreement was needed, especially for anything difficult. They weren't just going to put me through difficult situations. They needed my agreement, or else it wouldn't happen. And I agreed to a number of different things, that I witnessed other people agreeing to stuff. And some of these agreements spanned multiple lives. Like sometimes people were getting something in their upcoming life uh, that maybe was big, and then in order to make that happen, they needed to agree. Okay, and then in the subsequent life for them, they would play some kind of role helping somebody else. But it was all handled perfectly by these guides. They communicated with other guides, and it was all orchestrated perfectly. But I agreed to all kinds of stuff. All sorts of my life was there. There was a plan to it. But my guides also assured me, they were very clear, that when I was actually here living this life, I would be able to make, whatever decisions I wanted. Like I would have the free will, and I could still make decisions. I could alter these plans. None of these plans interfered with my ability to have free will. But when all these decisions were made, my guides asked me to take a look at this whole package, everything you've chosen, everything you've agreed to. Let's look at the entire package again and make sure, do you have any problems with any of this? Are there any changes you want to make? Do you agree to live this life? And we looked at the whole thing, and I agreed, okay, yes, I will live this life. I agreed to it. They weren't forcing me. They didn't make me. It was my agreement, because I knew there was a significant benefit to me for going through this life. So with that kind of like that answered the question I had, and I was back to floating in my neighbor's backyard, just kind of wandering around. And I had one more big question. I wanted to know, okay, I understand why I'm Aaron, why I'm living this life. And I understand I've lived many lives before, but what was I doing between lives? Like how did that work? Where had I been before this life and between other lives? And so I was shown, like, what I would call brief clips. Like I re-experienced a whole bunch of experiences in brief that answered my question. I saw that I had been in a number of different spiritual realms between lives. Some of them were really bad, some of them were really good. I'd been to a wide range. It became very clear that the way we live life directly affects our experience in the afterlife, when our bodies die.
Huh.
And I had lived lives where I had hurt people, or been angry and hateful, and done terrible things. And then I had lived lives where I had been like a good person and helped other people. And in the worst of these realms, I had been like I looked like a monster. The way it works is our internal nature, how loving we are, or how hateful we are. Like on Earth, we look how we look, and our internal nature doesn't really matter. We could be very hateful on the inside and very beautiful on the outside. But in the afterlife, it's not like that. That internal nature, it's like it controls what you look like. Your looks are basically dependent on how loving you are. And in one of these lives, I had been a very hateful person, um, and I looked like some kind of monster. Instead of arms, I had claws, and I was with a whole bunch of other being with each other. I was trying to kill them. I was trying to control the situation. It was horrible, absolutely miserable. No knowledge of the past or hope for a future. All we knew was fighting each other. That was it. And I existed like this for I don't know how long, but eventually I stopped. I stopped fighting with those around me, and I actually tried to help someone. And like as soon as I tried to help this other being, this angel or being of light that was up above swooped down and pulled me out of this horrible fight. And I asked, why did you pull me out of that? And he said that when I stopped fighting with those around me and I tried to help someone, I didn't belong there anymore. And he further told me that every one of these beings down there would eventually leave when they were ready. Uh, and as I understand it, I transitioned to live another life after that. And I saw other, you know, like dark realms where the souls there were unhappy. And in each of these realms, the souls there, they were all similar. They were kind of like they all had the same mindset or whatever. Anyway, I also saw some happy realms. One of the realms looked just like Earth. It had streets and buildings, and I remember a lamppost very clearly. And the souls there, they were living, or they were. existing kind of like they had on Earth. They like had jobs, they were doing stuff, they were, walking around and but they were very happy. Their happiness was significantly higher than anything you would see on Earth. And then I saw this other realm I had been in where it was like a city of light. All the buildings were translucent, all the beings there were translucent. They looked kind of like a person made of light, but you could kind of see through them. And the translucent beings where you can see through them, I want to just describe that a little bit. On Earth, we all have surface features. We can smile or frown, or you see how old they are. You can tell something about a person just by looking at them. In the spiritual realm with these translucent beings, they're open and honest enough that you can like you see into them, and there's internal features that are kind of like the facial features that we have. And you can see stuff about them. You can know them at a deeper level just by looking at them. And there's a beauty to it that's hard to describe. It doesn't really translate here, but um, it's absolutely beautiful being able to see into someone and they can see into you, and it creates an intimacy and closeness that's hard to describe. It's just it's really amazing. But anyway, in this city of light, that's how these beings existed, and their happiness was off the charts. Like they were incredibly happy. Um, and with that, my question was answered, and I was back to floating in my neighbor's backyard. And I was just kind of floating around, and I had this realization. The realization was that, oh my gosh, when I die, when this life is over, I can go back to one of these happy realms. And I was so excited about that. I was so happy. I was ready to be done. I wanted to go back and have that happiness and rejoin my friends. I had like some kind of friends that I was extremely close with in the spiritual realm. And I was so excited about that. And just as I had that realization, this being of light or angel, some kind of powerful being came to me very quickly, and he said, "You are not to leave your body." And bam, like that, I was back in my body. And I stood up. I was confused. But at that point, my brother had come to check on me because I guess he saw that my body was just laying there for maybe 30 seconds or whatever it is. And I stood up and I walked straight home. I was confused. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to process all this. I tried to talk to my mom, but at that age, there's no way I could have explained all this.
Mm.
It just wasn't possible for me at that age. I was an introvert and I had a speech impediment, and I could barely communicate just normally. So to explain all this stuff, it just wasn't going to happen. But I would think about this experience like daily for maybe 6 months, trying to understand what I had been through and process this information. And I was after about roughly 6 months, I was contacted telepathically, like mind to mind communication. And it was my guides. I knew exactly who it was. And they explained that this experience you had is interfering with your life. You're not going to be able to live life as intended if you have this information, if you have this knowledge. We'd like your permission to hide this experience, excuse me, to hide this experience because it prevents you from developing faith, and you're not, it's like you're not ready to handle all this information. But if you agree, we're going to make changes to your life plan, and we're going to hide this memory from you, but you'll get it back when you're older.
Okay,
They were
you're
saying
breaking
to a
up just a
degree.
minute there. Go back to what they
Okay.
were telling you again.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. My guides told me that essentially I couldn't have, because of what I had experienced, I knew about the afterlife. I wouldn't be able to develop faith,
Faith.
and that it was interfering with my life. So they wanted to make changes to my life plan,
Okay.
and they wanted to hide this experience from me until I was much older. And I agreed to their plan, even though it would mean a more difficult life for me, but it would prepare me to be able to process this information that I've received, this knowledge.
Huh.
So they hid my experience. I didn't think about it again for years, years and years. I went through life. I had my nose broken as a teenager, even though I had no memory whatsoever that I had agreed to that. I went through other stuff that I had agreed to. I went to college, graduated college, got married, had 3 kids, and I think it was about 13 years ago, I was reading a news magazine article about Eben Alexander, and they wrote an article about it. And like something about reading his experience triggered for me the memory of everything that I had been through that I hadn't thought about in 30 years.
Hmm.
And
Eben
like I
Alexander,
got all
huh?
those memories back. Yeah, yeah, he's kind of a famous near-death experiencer.
Okay.
Anyway, I got my memories back, and that was about 13 years ago. So I've had time to process that and understand what I've been through. As a 6-year-old, some of this stuff is hard to understand, but
Mhm.
as an adult, you can understand a lot of this stuff a lot more clearly, or at least I could. So anyway, I just try to share my experience what I can. Uh, you know, talk to people like you and say, hey, this happened to me, and I'm just trying to share it.
So when 13 years ago, when you were reading that and it came back to you, did it all hit at once or did it come slowly?
I'd say about half of it hit at once,
Hmm.
and then half of it started kind of like trickled in. And for a long time, there was like stuff that would trickle in, but it's been a while since I've remembered anything new.
Wow, that is so fascinating.
Most of that was kind of toward yeah, 12 years.
Um, I remember on one of the podcasts I was listening to you on, you had mentioned a lifetime where you had a family, and I don't know what was going on in the situation, but you'd thrown yourself off a cliff or something like that. Can you describe that memory?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, sure. So my guides during the life planning, they showed me a number of different things I had done in previous lives, and that was one thing they showed me. I'm not exactly sure why they showed it to me, but they showed long, long time ago. I think this is like thousands of years ago, maybe. I don't even know. But in some sort of primitive society, I had, like a family, and life was really hard. And I was on top of like a cliff or something, or a high rock. I don't know exactly what it was. And I was, frustrated with life. And so I jumped off and it killed me. And my guides showed it to me, and they basically explained that you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to end your own life, and that what I had done created a lot of difficulties for my family and my friends and people I knew. I couldn't bring them food. I couldn't help them, whatever it was. And basically, they said that you had to relive another life, and face the exact same challenges again until you could overcome them. Like I hadn't by ending that life, I hadn't escaped those challenges. I just made them worse, and I created difficulties for those around me. And I had to reface those challenges again until I could overcome them.
Interesting. So you're given kind of an eternal opportunity to overcome challenges and
Right,
continue to expand, like basically forever. Is the
right,
end
right,
goal to be one of the faces of God? You said that he showed you his face and it was many, and that's
right.
fascinating.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Is eventually we're gonna learn what we need to learn, which is to be loving, kind, compassionate, honest, act with integrity, generosity, service to others, all these kind of things. But when we freely choose those traits for ourselves, we're done with Earth, and then I think there's a lot more further refinement after that. But eventually, we get to the point where we're just loving souls. Like that's just who we are. That's what we freely choose. And when we're at that point, as I understand it, we're free to go back to that highest level, which is with God and with all these other souls who are just nothing but love. And that existence is the highest level of happiness that a soul can have. That's my understanding.
That's really cool. Um, on my fourth episode of the podcast, I was speaking with a man. He calls himself William Melchizedek. And there's this crazy story where my son and I, he was just about to go to the army years ago, and we went to climb up on our last day in Sedona to this top of a rock called Bell Tower. We have a little box up there. We like to write a message in or put our names in. We were here, and we get to the top of the mountain, and we were going to be late getting home, which was going to be a bad thing because we needed to help my wife with a party that everybody from all over the place was coming to say goodbye to my son, right? And these guys were dressed in all white, long hair, and crystals around their neck. And they had a camera. They had
Okay.
just been filming something. And I was like, hey, do you guys mind if we come over there? Come on, brothers, and we went over there and proceeded to talk to them for about 45 minutes. And it was crazy because we ended up getting home an hour early, even though that happened. And I was like, "Oh, I don't understand." That
Okay.
was weird. But it was sort of meant to be, like years ago, I remember listening to the Art Bell show, and he had an author on where he was talking about reincarnation. And I was raised Christian, and that was like not even an option for me to think about or believe
Right.
in.
Right.
But the stories were so compelling. And so we started to talk to these guys, and he says, "Okay, so I want to give your son a blessing. Is that all right?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I'll take all the blessings for my boy he can get going into the military." You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And he said, "Okay, I'm going to speak the language of light." And I've got this on recording, but it was about a minute and a half long. And we closed our eyes as he began. And instantly I was uh, transported to another time and place. I still have a problem processing it and understanding it, but I was
Right.
this huge man in furs. I had this long hair, and I was spattered in blood, and I was raising a sword, and we were screaming in victory. We were just, "Ah," this guttural
Uh-huh.
scream. And there were only a few other guys, and we had just slaughtered everyone, and we were the conquerors. And
Right.
immediately, as I opened my eyes, I was brought back into this experience. And I was like, "Okay, I'm in Sedona. Okay, I remember all this. This makes sense. What was that?" And right then and there, I was like, something else is going on that I'm not fully aware of. And I've come to believe that that was a very short glimpse of a past life that I've lived. And as we left them, I thanked them, and we started down the mountain to the car to go home. And my son said, "Did you see something?" When he started praying. And I'm like, "Yeah." And that's all that was said. We just went home and were
Okay.
kind of in shock for a little while as we drove along and talked. Are there other life experiences that they showed you that kind of come to mind that sort of sent you a message that you needed to know for this life? Was it helpful to you at all?
Yeah, what you described is very similar to what I remember. You saw like a brief clip, right? Maybe a couple seconds long, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was shown, a whole bunch of brief clips, maybe a couple seconds long, that that showed me like what I had been doing in some past life. A couple, there was a lot of them, more than I can remember, but some of the stuff I do remember, I think is pretty interesting. One is it was a similar situation. We were in some kind of battle or something, and I think this was like medieval Europe, maybe 1,000 years ago, something like that. And we were in some kind of battle between these, two different kingdoms were fighting with each other. And we were in some kind of battle, and I was like super gung ho, like, oh yeah, we're gonna go kill these guys. And like I was the first person killed, which to me was kind of funny, honestly,
Yeah,
because I was super gung ho
anticlimactic.
about going to
Damn it.
battle, and then I die right away. Uh,
Huh.
yeah, like there was a bunch of these little clips of lives, and going back to like prehistoric times, and you know, you put it all together. To me, it's very interesting. But my takeaway lesson is that we have had a lot of past lives. I don't know how many, and what we've done in the past lives, like they affect our current life. And I
Mhm.
take that one step further. And what I do in this current life, it's going to affect my future life. And I think I can work that information to my benefit and just be good to other people. Look for ways I can serve someone else or be generous to someone else, help someone in some sort of way. And that's going to help them now in this life, but it'll also help me in a future life to have more blessings and an easier time. And it's just you're getting on board with the way God wants you to be anyway. It's just that's the way we should be living. It's just being good to other people.
That is such an empowering statement, like we can all use information like this to our benefit. Like, who do
Right.
we, if we're to envision our highest version of the self while in this body, in this life, then what would that look like, and how can we embody that? How can we lean into it and really use it to our advantage to progress more quickly? I love that.
Yeah.
You said something about service there. It was about 3 weeks ago. I lost a brother, and I was talking to one of my other brothers the next day, and he said, "Yeah, I'm really feeling sad," and I was feeling pretty bad. And then I remembered, that service is the antidote to despair. And so they
Hmm.
started writing the kids letters and kind of getting out of their heads and into their hearts and doing something for someone
Right.
else. And immediately you said the whole energy in the room had shifted, you know. And you had spoken about the translucent state of beings in one of the
Right.
life experiences and how you can literally see them and know them because it's
Right.
transparent. And many times in this life, we get so caught up in the physical aspect of this human experience that we look at the
Right.
outer person to try and see them and know them. But what do you think about the idea that the vibrational and energetic frequency that is emitting from us at all times can be sensed or seen or understood or really known deeply by others that surround us?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up vibration. Like that was it's like an ever-present trait in the spiritual realm. It's kind of like breathing here on earth. Like every being has a vibration to them. And as I understand it, by being loving, kind, compassionate, that like that's how we raise our vibration. And if we're, like hateful, we're mean to others, that kind of thing, it like lowers our vibration. And so we're constantly trying to raise our vibration because in the spiritual realm, the higher vibration is more wisdom, more happiness, higher level realms. Um, and it's not like an all or nothing kind of thing. It's like a gradual change. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
how we conduct ourselves, how we act, the kind of vibration we have, it affects other people. Like it's like I'm not sure how to describe it, but if like at the atomic level, if one little atom is vibrating, it vibrates all the other ones around them. And it's the same with us here on Earth. We affect others around us. We can help them raise their vibrations just by being loving and helping them in some way, and all these positive characteristics. It's like it spreads. It goes beyond us.
Yeah, that grok's, man. I love that. And it kind of speaks to the importance of environment that we place ourselves into intentionally, like who we surround ourselves with, like who are
Right.
we like choosing to be around. You know, that's huge because if we're
Yeah.
affecting others, they're also affecting us vibrationally.
Hmm.
Um, I a few years back, I discovered a book by David R. Hawkins, and in it was something that he referred to as the map of consciousness. And obviously, when we're dead, we vibrate at zero, you know. And then there was like, I think it was 10 was anger and hatred and fear. And it went up all the way to like Buddha consciousness or Christ consciousness at like 1,000.
Okay.
And
Okay.
through psychokinesis, he was able to do testing on books, on people, sort of like an energetic, like speak the truth, and you can't budge their arm at all. But if they're lying, then it goes down really quickly. It's sort of like the vibration translated
Okay.
over, and he was able to kind of gauge where people or certain books vibrated. And that
Hmm.
was kind of interesting. It's like good to know, you know, like, hey, what does this vibrate at? What's this person vibrate at? It's always a curiosity thing after that. Like,
Yeah. Right.
who should I be around? Which books should I read? What should I stay away from? You know, things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I want to just throw out one more thing that I didn't mention
Hmm.
is when I talked about my guides were arranging for me to have interactions with other souls during this life. They wanted me to meet somebody, and this being this soul they wanted to meet was at a different vibration to me,
Hmm.
and so they needed my permission to lower my vibration so that we would be at the same vibration so that we could interact.
Hmm.
And like it just kind of goes to show you how important vibration is because it's like you're going to be with others who are at the same vibration as you. And you there, Pete?
Okay, there you go. You said we're going to
Yeah,
be
we
with
broke up for a
others.
second.
It kind of broke up.
Yeah, we're going to be with others who are at the same vibration that we're at.
Hmm.
And so that there's a saying, birds of a feather flock together. I
Yeah.
mean, that is so true in the spiritual realm. That's exactly what I saw. So, we want to be loving, kind, because we want to be around people like their souls like that, because it's just such a more pleasant experience.
Yeah. Over the years, I came across the book. My dad gave it to me. It's called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And it's talking about the law of attraction. and
Mhm.
how the energy that we emit out into the universe is what comes back to us. You know, the more
Yep.
loving and accepting and peaceful we are, the more people, things, circumstances, and situations that are loving and accepting and peaceful will be drawn to
Right.
us magnetically. Did
Exactly.
did you what do you think about the law of attraction and how can we use these things to our benefit while we're living this life?
Yeah, I think it's not always immediate. A lot of times we think, okay, I've been good today. My life should be perfect now.
Yeah,
From a spiritual perspective, it is really fast. But from a human's perspective, it can be slow. And I think we just need to stick with it. Stick with all those loving attributes, help other people, be generous, try to serve others if you have a reasonable opportunity. Uh, just stick with that path. That's the way to get the most out of this human experience. And put God to the test. As in, live that kind of life, and then God's going to come through with it's gonna benefit you significantly. It's not going to be right away. You got to be able to persevere, throughout the difficulties and still maintain that kind of mindset. And if you can do that, you're going to get rewarded. And you just need to have a little bit of faith that that's how it works. And you're not going to be disappointed when you finally understand, and you see the stuff for yourself. You're not going to be disappointed if you've been a loving person.
I love that. That's a great answer. Um, the Good in the Head podcast, goodinthead.com, I kind of compiled all of this information to empower people with information to kind of help and save and serve themselves in this life and kind of up level with their vibration, their mindset, belief systems, things like that. What are some ways in your life, throughout all these experiences throughout your life, that you've found helpful and empowering to you to cultivate an inner world that is the way you want it?
Right. Well, it's still a work in progress. I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, forever.
I I haven't arrived at what I consider perfection at all.
Yeah.
I try to be accepting of others. There's all kinds of people in the world I don't agree with, but I try to be accepting and loving. Um, I try to have, look for ways where I can serve other people. How can I help somebody else? I try to look for those opportunities. I think, everybody's thinking, wow, I wish I won the lottery. I'd get a bunch of money. That would bring me happiness. I think, one genuine act of service where you're helping someone else is going to do more for your overall happiness than winning the lottery is. So I think, if you can find a way to genuinely help somebody else, like that's a huge opportunity and you should make the most of it.
Hmm.
And then, I see all kinds of stuff in the news that I don't like. But I try to not let it drag me down, it's easy to get wrapped up in that stuff and really give you a negative mindset. I try not to let what's going on in the world, drag me down because it has a way, it'll definitely try to do that if you let it. Um, and I also try to forgive myself that, hey, I'm a human, I'm a soul living this human experience and it's messy. Like nobody's going to get it perfect. It's just not how this thing works. And I try to forgive other people when they screw up, and I try to forgive myself when I screw up. And it's messy, but I think that's the only way to get through this is just um, to accept others' faults and accept your own, but try to move past them. Like try not to keep repeating the same things over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like spiraling back to the same lesson with a little more experience every time,
Right,
and hopefully it
right.
loops upward instead of downward, right?
Yeah, hopefully that's the goal.
Wow. I discovered a book years ago called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Came out, I
Okay.
think, in the 1920 area of this time, and in it, he wrote down all of these commonalities or similarities that the wealthiest, most successful, abundant inventors and millionaires of the time were all practicing. And in the book, he details like all of these practices that can be utilized to uplevel every aspect of the human experience. And I thought that was just fascinating. Um, through listening to experiences like yours, I feel like it's almost been a fast track for my soul to absorb the information that so many people have, brought back from the ether or, from wherever they go to. And it's fascinating that out of hundreds of stories I've listened to now, they're all so unique and individualized, almost like that person was a part of the soul that left the body or the energy that exited the body that they were inhabiting and animating. And then what they experience is so discrepant and so different. I've never heard two experiences even similar, but yet they all come back with similar
Mhm.
messages. And it's like I was
Right.
fully loved. There's just no judgment. Um, what are some of the main takeaways and messages that you brought back from your experience that sort of help you to live a better life now?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple main points. One is that in my interactions with God, it's just wonderful. Okay, it's none of this horrible stuff you might hear about in some religious text. God doesn't hate us, or he's not vengeful. He's not out to punish us. That's just not how it works. God is extremely loving, compassionate, just absolutely wonderful. And we were given free will as a gift. Like that's just part of our creation. And in order for us to get the most out of our existence, we need to freely embrace all those positive qualities that God embodies. And if we embrace those, there'll be a significant reward to it. And if we embrace the opposite qualities, they're going to bring some unpleasant consequences. So I think it's important just to keep I know I say this a lot, but that's what I think is most important is living your life with love, compassion, honesty, integrity, service, generosity, gratitude, all these positive traits. If you can focus on just trying to live a life like that, you'll be raising yourself spiritually, you'll be helping others. You can get through this whole process of coming to earth a lot faster. Just get with the program, be a good person. It's not too much to ask. So that to me, that's the big takeaway. I think people could really benefit. I'm not here to tell any one person exactly what to do or how to live their life, but each one of us knows what it's like to be a good person. We have our own concept of that. Embrace that. Be the good person. Try to do the right things according to your own conscience. And if we can all do that, this world will be a better place and will be much better suited for happiness in the afterlife.
Wow. So cause and effect, the law of cause and effect, every action results in an opposite reaction.
Right, right.
And results don't lie, right? Like how you feel is so important. And if you're feeling poorly, then maybe there needs to be a change within, do something
Yeah,
different, try
yeah,
something new. That's
right.
cool. So there's a near-death experiencer. Her handle is Buddha Betty. And in
Okay,
her story, she described how she also saw her pre-life. She was like moved into the realm of
okay,
remembrance, and she had gone into this huge grocery store. And in this life, she just loves cereal and all kinds of cereal. She eats it all the time, kind of thing. And
okay.
in this memory, she was shown her spirit guide walking with her into this huge warehouse of life experiences, all contained in cereal boxes, just rows and
Okay.
rows,
Yeah.
thousands of different
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
And she was told that she could pick out the life experiences she wanted and put them in the shopping cart. And the way she tells the story is kind of funny. She's like, and my dumbass, I just scooped them all in there. And her life experience up to this point, I was just blown away. I mean, she's been through a lot. Lost her parents to a suicide pact. They both killed themselves at the same time. She had
Oh,
a
wow.
sister a year younger than her, so they were 16, 17 when they lost their parents, who were heavily addicted to drugs. She had been abused, molested, and gone through all of this horrible stuff for years. And then after this near-death experience, in her own words, she went a little crazy and was preaching like she was Jesus to everybody,
Right.
and
Right.
now the pendulum swung and back and forth, and she's centered and grounded in such a spiritual way now that she's really helping other people navigate their lives, become less addicted or completely withdrawn from addictions, and their lives all start to become this beautiful thing. And I think wow, had
Right.
she died and not been doing this work right now, things would be so different. Or if she wasn't courageous enough like you are to share the stories, the actual experiences that you went through, then how different would it be? I don't know who this is going to reach, this recording, but I really hope that it strikes the hearts and minds and souls of people like it did me when I first heard your experience and
Right.
instills with them and inspires them to live a better, more compassionate, more peaceful, more loving and accepting lifestyle because the ripples are eternal. They're
Yeah.
going out forever. And
Hmm.
I'm just so grateful for you having the courage to tell this story.
Yeah, it hasn't always been easy, you know. It
Now let's talk about that. What transpired once you started sharing this story? Did you lose people, family, friends? How did that all go?
I, I wouldn't say I lost anybody, like no one shunned me based on it, but there's definitely been people I've told that thought I was crazy, I guess,
Uh-huh.
insane perhaps.
Yeah.
And then there's been some that have gone really well. People really, some people really connect with what I'm having to say. It's been a variety. And then, when I first got this experience back, when I first had these memories, it's like, it's kind of overwhelming. It's a lot to process. And I kind of like, well, how do I, how do I approach life, knowing that all this stuff and that I'm really a spiritual being. And
Mhm.
it took a while for me to come through all that and get with, I guess where I am now, where I'm just trying to share my story with anyone who's interested, not force it on anybody, but if someone's curious, I would definitely try to share it. Um, and then I wanted to respond to one thing you said about I guess the Buddha Betty with the cereal boxes.
Mhm.
In her experience, she saw cereal boxes that represented all these different lives that she'd lived. Um, and so some people think, okay, everyone's going to get to the afterlife and they're going to see cereal boxes that show the lives they live. And I'd like to say, no, that's not quite how it works. They tailored that experience specifically for her.
Mhm.
And anything that you're going to experience, they will tailor it specifically for you. Each of these near-death experiences, it's like it's tailored for the soul specifically. Like it's not a big deal on the spiritual realm for them to tailor it specifically for each soul. We don't all have to see a big library or have a judge and a jury like some people describe seeing that. It's like specific for each individual's needs, and that's kind of how it works. And so that helps explain why it's a little bit different for every soul that has one of these experiences.
Almost like they're being incredibly compassionate and tailoring it to each
Yeah,
individual so that it's not a shock to their system and doesn't throw them out of their alignment or
right.
something.
Yeah.
I watched the movie years ago, What Dreams May Come, and it was so
Hmm.
beautiful. Last year, I purchased the audio book, and it is so much better than the movie. I was blown away.
Okay.
And it kind of alluded to a possibility that when we leave this body and we pass on as consciousness as our true self, that what we experience in the afterlife literally is tailored in accordance to how we lived this life, this go round. And it was kind of verified to me through hearing your experience that that's highly probable, not just a
Right.
possibility.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
There was a woman I was speaking to, it was about 30 years ago. I was doing a non-emergency transportation. I was a driver. So we'd be given a name, uh, whether they need a wheelchair or a stretcher. And then you go into the home, you load them up, you take them to an appointment or to the hospital or to
Yeah.
dialysis, different things. And I got to this address, and it was a huge home. And I heard some voices in the back room. I finally just let myself in because nobody was answering the door. And I said, hello, oh, we're in here, and so I brought this stretcher. I was wheeling it in, and I walk in and I see this a quadriplegic laying down in a bed, and you're never prepared to what you're about to experience. It was
Okay.
an awesome job. I loved it. Always a surprise, always an adventure. And this woman was reading to this man out of a Playboy and showing him pictures. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I'll come right back. She goes, no, 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 we're good, we're ready. And she closed it, set it aside, and we start talking as I'm loading her up and we're driving to the hospital. And she's explaining to me that she's his nurse. And I immediately thought, damn, that's the kind of nurse I want. She's cool, you know? How kind is that?
Uh-huh.
And she's I've been watching him for years and I'm paid by the family. And she goes, and the strangest thing, I saw my mom and dad a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, okay, so what? And she goes, well, they died 3 years ago. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay, so immediately my curiosity's piqued. I got to hear more, right?
Okay.
And she said that she was asking them questions and they're like, whoa, you're not supposed to be able to see us, you know? And she goes, well, I do. So I'm going to ask my questions. You know, she was very forthright and interesting
Okay.
individual. And I said, well, what questions did you ask them? And she goes, well, I asked them religious questions first. And she said, well, when you got to heaven, what religion is everybody, you know? And they said, oh, well, each religion kind of has their own space. They go with the
Right. Right.
people, you know, that they're comfortable with and believe in the same ways. And then she said, well, here we are in Utah, you know, like I thought everybody was Mormon, you know, kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And they were like Lutheran. And she said, oh, no, they've got their own place that they go to, just like we do, you
Right.
know, as Lutherans. And I thought that was interesting how affected that projection of their afterlife was it, like they fully embodied this experience and brought a lot of that with them. And so many other experiences I've listened to now, they just they mentioned that they come back and they feel more spiritual than they do religious, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Absolutely.
Did you grow up religious and how did that affect you when you came back?
Uh, so I was raised Catholic, I guess,
Okay.
kind of a, progressive Catholic church or moderate Catholic. You know, it wasn't like extreme stuff or anything. And even from a young age, some of the Catholic teachings didn't quite vibe with me.
Mhm.
You know, it wasn't quite my thing. And so then for a while, I considered myself just kind of uh, just a Christian, a non-denominational Christian, I guess. And you know, with my experience, I come to view it a little differently. I now say I don't think I fit into any religion right now, honestly. Um, I really appreciate the teachings of Jesus, but modern Christianity, I think, has to me gotten away from some of that.
Mhm.
Um, I view religion as a really nice starting place. It gives you a basic concept of God, some basic ideas of morality. But I think as we go on and we progress and we learn more spiritually, I think religion tends to hold people back. It's kind of like creates a box and it tries to hold people in the box. And if someone tries to get out of the box and grow their understanding beyond the confines of their religion, the religion tries to cram them back in the box. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I think at some point, if you really want to get grow spiritually, you kind of have to grow beyond whatever religion you were brought up in and accept some truths that are beyond that and maybe accept that hey maybe part of this religion isn't quite perfect and that's okay, that's a good thing, and that's kind of how I view it at this point.
That's cool. You know, I realize that it's going to take an open mind and an open heart to listen to conversations like these. And if the audience is still with us, I thank you and ask you to continue to keep an open mind, an interest in learning about things that may not really align with your current views and beliefs, because those are things that can always be upgraded. I listen to Abraham Hicks quite a bit, and the thing that she says about beliefs is interesting to me. She says a belief is just a thought that you continue to think. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, so I can literally choose to believe anything I want. And as long as I continue to think it, then the subconscious mind will go to work on proving that, like bias confirmation almost, right? Um,
Right. Yeah.
what are some beliefs that may have been altered after your experience and then later in life after you started remembering all these things?
Well, I guess when I was younger I really wasn't sure about God, you know, after I had this experience but it had been hidden from me, I really felt like well, you know, I don't really know, I didn't feel like I had the answer. Um, some of this, but I was raised in a Christian community, Catholic specifically, and some of the stuff I believed then, I now realize maybe that's not quite how it works. some of the stuff about the blood of Jesus, or that you know we're like sinful creatures, and God, the only way God loves us is through the blood of Jesus. And I now realize that's not quite how it works. And if you listen to some of the stuff Jesus said in the Bible, um, it doesn't quite line up with modern Christian teachings. And so I've been forced to rethink how I view all this as work, how I think it all works, and it just doesn't quite match with what Christianity currently focuses on. It does ironically match with a lot of what Jesus taught, which aren't the same thing if you really get into it. So. I guess it's really refocused for me the importance of being a good person, living a good life, helping other people. That's really what's focused for me. Is that's what's important, and it's kind of I gotten a little bit away from some of the other stuff that I've been taught growing up.
Hmm. I was raised Mormon. My parents sort of started going to church when I was around 5, and so I was raised pretty black and white, and I had to fit into this square box, my entire
I,
childhood, teenage
yeah,
years.
yeah,
I always tried to do what I knew would please my parents or the church leaders, different, I was not living my life for me. I was living my life for them,
yeah,
kind of, to make sure that everybody was happy and
right,
comfortable. I ended up going on a Mormon mission. I went to Greece, lived in Athens, Thessaloniki. I was there for just over 2 years and was able to learn quite a bit of things, And one thing that baffled me, I was raised out in the mountains and went to public school, but was bused way back out in the mountains. Didn't have many friends growing up because we were just so far away. And so socially, I was a little
yeah,
awkward and uncomfortable. But when I got there, at that time on the planet Earth, Christians only occupied about 10% of people's religious beliefs. And I was like, wait, what? I thought everybody was Christian,
right,
and it was kind of baffling to realize that there are so many different religions and ways of thinking. And it sort of expanded my mind and opened me up to different possibilities at that time. It was really a good experience. And
yeah,
eventually, a few years after I got back, we stopped going to church and started exploring different lifestyles, different ways of being. And it's really interesting in the pre-life memory that you were shown about being able to choose the exact body, the color of your eyes, the hair, every aspect of the physicality of it, and then all of the experiences that you would then go through. It's almost like
right,
with our free agency, we flow through life and we definitely hit those points that we had been predestined to experience. And it's just so
right.
fascinating to watch how life unfolds sort of synchronistically and in its own divine timing. Um, were you shown anything that hasn't unfolded yet in your life that you may be looking forward to or expecting?
Uh, Not really. A lot of the stuff I saw about my life was related to other people, and I saw kind of where a lot of people were in their spiritual, uh, like where they were in their spiritual growth. And there's been a couple things like relationships with other people. One example is there was a coworker, and I remembered him from my experience. Like I know that somehow we were going to have a relationship, but I barely knew the guy. We hardly ever talked. And I was like, what? This doesn't really make sense. And then lo and behold, there's a reorganization kind of thing. And I'm sitting next to this guy for 3 years. And, so we talk almost every day. And there's been a lot of little things like that where it's more about my relationship with other people or about where they are in their development, where I saw something and it's like, I don't really understand how that fits. And then, a couple of years go by and something changes. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, now I understand why I saw that or why that person is going through such and such. So there's been little things like that that really stood out, but there's not like any big, like I didn't see any big world events that I could say, okay, this is going to happen on this date or anything. There was nothing like that. But there was a lot of little things with other people that I saw. And so there's times where I feel like I know something about somebody and I can't really say it, but it's kind of in a general sense, like this person has, this struggle or whatever. So I guess that's all I could say about future events is just little things with other people.
Okay. When I was 17, I was at family reunion and I had an accident where we were trying to see how high we could get in a rope swing with a little stick through the loop at the end of it. And I
Okay.
got about 15 feet in the air and the stick snapped. And I remember that. And according to my cousins that were with me, I landed right on my head, immediately went into convulsions and started turning colors. And
Oh wow.
I was gone. It was minutes before one of the aunts came out that was a nurse and turned me over on my side. And I guess I was suffocating on my tongue and didn't get air or whatever. And I don't remember any out of body experience at all. And maybe someday I will. I don't know. I know a lot of people don't remember it until sometimes 30, 40 years later. Um, but what I have learned from so many near-death experiencers is that a lot of them somehow, I guess you could say the veil was thinned or they had
You're right, right,
abilities or some kind of gifts that they come back with that then manifest in their lives as they're living, such as like precognition, being energy readers, being more sensitive to vibrational frequencies of places, things, people, different stuff like that.
right,
And I have many experiences in my life where that has happened and it really freaked me out. And the people that I was with, because I would be telling them things and then immediately after that thing would happen. And they're like, how did you know that? What the hell's going on? And I don't really talk
right.
about it a lot because I'm like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm crazy, you know. Takes a lot of courage to be authentic and honest and truthful like
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
been, you know. And so it's really inspiring for me hearing
Okay.
your story. Did you, I mean, you just mentioned that you would kind of know like, oh, this person is key for some reason. Um, are there other gifts or anything that you'd like to speak about that either you or other people you've known have experienced?
Well, I think you said the thinning of the veil. I think that's pretty appropriate. I feel like it's a little thinner for me, but it's still there.
Mhm.
I feel like maybe I have a little better connection with my guides and my conscious. And there's times where I feel like I'm doing something and my guides are like, "All right, don't do that. You shouldn't be doing that."
Mhm.
Or there's times where I'm doing something and my guides are like, "Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing." Um, so I guess that's probably the biggest, the most significant gift or whatever I might have is just a little bit better connection with my guides and being pointed in the right direction. But some of these other gifts that other people describe, I don't really feel like I have that. Um, so, just a little bit for me, just the thinning of the veil.
Nice. So you do feel an intuitive knowing or you get a hit when things are off or on and
Yeah,
then kind
yeah,
of go in that trajectory.
exactly.
Um,
Yep.
One thing that I guess has happened is every once in a while I'll get what I'll call a waking vision. I'm not drunk, I'm not high, I'm not doing drugs, all that stuff, but I'll just be sitting there, like maybe laying down in bed. I'm not even tired yet, fully awake. My eyes are closed, but it's like when my eyes are closed, I see so much more than when they're open. And
Good.
one of the one of the things that I've seen that I'll share is it, and this happened human time within 10 to 15 seconds, but I was sort of taken to a space where I was able to watch myself being born to my mother and father that I was born to, and I lived out this beautiful life. And then immediately I was reborn into the same body, and one little tiny decision altered the trajectory of that whole other life. And this happened literally just trillions of times. So many, like there's no number. It's just like an infinite number of possibilities of trajectories and lives lived. And I popped out of bed and I was like, babe, you've got to hear this, you know. And she's like, just shut up and go to sleep. Tell me tomorrow, you know. My wife was so much fun. And so I told her the next day and she's like, huh, you know, and that's what I said, huh, what does that mean? I was like baffled by this as a possibility. I mean, is there, and people talk about timelines, planes of existence, and simultaneous life experiences throughout time and space unfolding. And there's a guy named Greg Braden that says consciousness informs itself through its creations, right? And for weeks I chewed on that and I thought, what better way for consciousness to inform itself with information, unlimited information, than by inhabiting trillions of lives and timelines
Right.
simultaneously as an energetic kind of thing. And that was fascinating to think about. I was like, huh? It's a little
Right.
much.
Right.
It's a lot. Now, you said you're an engineer. What type of engineer are you?
Electrical engineer. I work at Newport News Shipbuilding. They make all of the country's aircraft carriers and half of the submarines for the U.S. Navy.
Sick. My wife and I work at Boeing at the plant here in
Okay.
Mesa, and we're in the electrical department. We build the
Okay.
harnesses for the Apache helicopter.
Okay. Okay.
It's a lot of fun. Now, with your engineering mind, you may be interested in this, and you may have already come across this information, but Tom Campbell is a physicist or was a physicist, a brilliant mind. He's been on the Joe Rogan show and a whole bunch of other podcasts, and he wrote a trilogy of books called My Big Toe or Theory of Everything. And with the mind that you have, I imagine you could probably get through these three books. I got about halfway through the first one and had to take a break. I'll shelf that. I'll come back to it. It is deep stuff.
Right. Right.
But in his life journey, he started meditating and he was a computer coder. And back then, you know how it was where you got to punch holes on each line to program
Right.
the
Right. Right.
computer. And when he was meditating, he was able to, in his mind, flip through all the cards and pick out the one mistake out of thousands of possibles
Okay.
that was altering the program and making it not run properly. He'd go straight to work the next day, get that card. Sure enough, it was off by just a millimeter. And he'd
Uh-huh.
repunch that card and bam, it would go. And
Okay.
pretty soon everybody's coming to him, hey, can you help me do mine? He goes, no, 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 you figure yours out. I got mine.
Okay.
Eventually he read a book by Bob Monroe, which is basically Bob's journal entries of his out of body experiences that he had intentionally designed a way to do on a periodic basis, like either nightly or weekly. And in Bob Monroe's book, he describes all of these out of body experiences. And then eventually, Tom Campbell came to see him with a couple other people, and they started doing what's called remote viewing. And then eventually, I guess the military got wind of it, adapted it, started using it. Have you
Right.
heard about these things?
I've heard a little bit about there's some kind of CIA study on remote viewing. I've heard a little bit about that.
Yeah. Sean Ryan has had quite a few guests on that were remote viewers for the military for decades. And the
Okay.
stories that they share, just mind-blowing. It is so wild.
Yeah.
And then on YouTube, I started looking around and they've got 53 recordings of what's called the gateway tapes, which were originally designed by the Monroe Institute to utilize to get into a meditative state and then have an out-of-body experience, right? So I got curious. I was like, oh, I'm going to
Okay.
check out this first tape, the gateway tape, and I listened to it a couple times at work. I'm like, that's interesting, different binaural beats, and there was off pitch just a little bit in both ears. And I did experiment with it. I did it one time, had a total unexplainable out of body experience, and it scared the hell out of me. And so I kind of haven't done it again just yet, but I will.
Okay. Okay.
And through all these experiences I've had in my life, the near-death experience, and then the precognitive abilities I had after that, hearing so many other people having all these different gifts that are just incredible. And your amazing story that you've told today that you've shared on so many podcasts, uh, I just think that the possibilities of realities are limitless. And
Right. Right.
if we can open up to that and no longer be confined to our current lives and expand our thoughts and our thinking and curate an inner world that is filled with limitless possibilities, then the potential for the realities that we live while in this life right now may greatly affect what we do next.
Yeah.
And like everything you've told me has just been so beautiful and such a gift to hear. And I just really appreciate you taking your time to come on the show today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed talking to you. I hope it's helpful, and I always appreciate the
Very,
opportunity to share my experience. So,
very.
thank you for that.
You do have a YouTube. um, site for people to look at?
Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody wants to get in contact with me, I'm easy to find. Aaron Green 1975 at gmail.com. I have a small YouTube channel, Emerging from the Light. You can find me on Facebook, Aaron Thomas Green, and I got a book and a website coming out eventually, Emerging from the Light, and I'll go into more detail about my experience in that book, and hopefully that'll come out in the June timeframe.
Oh man, I'm excited. I'll definitely be purchasing
Yeah,
that
I'll let you
book.
know. I'll definitely
Yeah,
let you know.
excellent. Thank you for being courageous enough to speak your truth and not be quieted. I think
Yeah,
that
thank you.
your story is so empowering and has so much information at so many levels.
Right,
Once I dive into it and hear it in different aspects, and then so many other podcasters have asked you different questions, about
right.
so many topics, and your responses have always been so compassionate and so filled with love and acceptance and kindness, and I just appreciate the man you are.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Is there a message that you would want to share with the world before we close?
Yeah, just what I've already said, uh, love your neighbor. Like that's there's all kinds of interesting aspects of our creation and our life. But the important thing, yes, God is real, a loving, kind, compassionate God. And then as we live our life, we need to try to be a good person, try to do the right things, try to help others. If we go through life like that, all the rest of the stuff will kind of fall into place. And I know it's hard, I know life is difficult, but if you can focus on that, I think that's the way to get the most out of life.
Awesome. Great response. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Pete.